What if I told you that stress is not something that happens to you, but something you are actively creating? That the crushing pressure you feel every single day doesn't come from your job, your responsibilities, or your future, but from the way you're holding on to them. Everyone thinks stress is caused by external events, deadlines, bills, expectations, but if that were true, then why can two people face the same situation and one is completely overwhelmed while the other remains calm? The truth is, stress isn't in the situation, it's in the mind. And the mind creates stress when it refuses to accept reality as it is. Imagine gripping a rope as tightly as possible, your hands burning, muscles straining. You think the pain is coming from the rope, but it's not. The pain is coming from your grip. The moment you let go, relief is instant. Life works the same way. The things you fear, the things you obsess over, the things you try to control, none of them are actually hurting you. What's hurting you is your resistance to them, your refusal to let them be what they are. People suffer because they demand that life operates according to their personal expectations. They want certainty in a world that is uncertain. They want control over things that were never theirs to control. They want people to act a certain way, events to unfold in a specific manner, outcomes to align perfectly with their desires. And when they don't, anxiety, frustration, stress. But here's the crazy part, none of these expectations were ever real. They were just ideas, illusions the mind created and then became enslaved by. A Zen master once said, "The river does not push. The river flows the moment you realize that life is not something to be controlled but something to move with. Stress loses its grip on you." Because the truth is, you don't have a problem, you have a belief that things should be different than they are. And that belief is the only thing standing between you and complete peace.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Right now, think about the biggest source of stress in your life. Maybe it's work, maybe it's money, maybe it's uncertainty about the future. Now, instead of trying to fix it, instead of trying to solve it, just accept it completely. Say, "This is what it is," let go of the mental fight. Feel what happens in your body. That feeling right there, that's freedom. Not because the problem disappeared, but because your resistance to it did. This is the secret few people understand. Life is not stressful. Life is just life. It becomes stressful the moment you insist that it should be something else. The moment you stop demanding that life be different, the moment you stop gripping so tightly to outcomes, the moment you stop believing that your happiness depends on things going exactly the way you want, that's when everything changes. Because stress is not in the world. Stress is in your mind. And the mind only creates stress when it forgets that it was never in control to begin with. Most people live their entire lives trapped in a cycle of stress because they mistake control for security. They think if they plan enough, work hard enough, anticipate every possible problem, they can somehow force life into submission. But life doesn't work that way. No matter how much you plan, things will still go wrong. No matter how much you prepare, uncertainty will still exist. No matter how tightly you hold on, change will still happen. The need for control is the greatest illusion the human mind has ever created, and yet people base their entire existence on trying to maintain it. And when reality doesn't cooperate, stress. But what if the real problem isn't that life is unpredictable? What if the real problem is your refusal to accept that unpredictability? The river does not stress about where it is going. It simply moves. The tree does not panic when the wind blows. It bends. But humans, They fight, they resist, they demand that the world conform to their expectations, and they suffer because of it. Imagine watching a storm from behind a window. The rain is pouring, the wind is howling, but inside you are dry, untouched. Now imagine stepping outside and screaming at the sky, demanding the rain stop, resisting the wind, trying to fight something that was never in your control. This is how most people live. They are in a constant battle with life, trying to force things to be different than they are, and in doing so, they create their own suffering. But what happens if you stop? What happens if you stop? What happens if, instead of fighting the storm, you simply watch it? It still rains, the wind still blows, but you are no longer caught in it. This is what Zen masters mean when they talk about letting go. Letting go does not mean giving up. It does not mean doing nothing. It means dropping the illusion that you were ever in control in the first place. It means understanding that stress is not caused by life itself, but by your attachment to how you think life should be. Right now, think about something that has been stressing you out. Maybe it's a problem at work. Maybe it's uncertainty about the future. Maybe it's something from your past that you can't seem to let go of. Now, instead of trying to fix it, instead of trying to resist it, just allow it to be there. Don't label it as good or bad. Don't try to change it. Just let it exist without resistance. Feel what happens inside you. That shift, that release, that is peace. Not because the situation changed, but because your relationship to it did. This is what most people never realize. They think peace comes from fixing their problems, but peace has nothing to do with what is happening outside and everything to do with what is happening inside. The moment you stop resisting life, life stops feeling like something you have to fight. The moment you stop clinging to control, you realize you never needed it to be okay. Stress is not a byproduct of life. Stress is a byproduct of your refusal to let life be what it is. And the moment you stop resisting, the moment you stop gripping so tightly, the moment you finally understand that you were never supposed to control it all to begin with, that is when you become truly free. People spend their entire lives chasing things they think will bring them peace, but they never stop to question why peace is something they have to chase in the first place. They think, once I get this job, once I make this amount of money, once I find the right person, once I fix this problem, then I'll finally be able to relax. But every time they reach a goal, the next one appears. Every time they solve a problem, a new one takes its place. The finish line keeps moving, and they never arrive. And this is where the greatest mistake is made: the belief that peace is something external, something that comes from getting life under control. But peace has never come from control. Peace has never come from fixing everything, from making sure nothing goes wrong, from arranging life into some perfect, predictable order. If peace came from control, then the most controlling people would be the most peaceful, and yet the opposite is true. The more control someone seeks, the more anxious they become. The more they grip onto life, the more fragile they feel. The more they try to hold everything together, the more they fall apart. The truth is, peace is not something you create. Peace is something that appears the moment you stop creating stress. A still lake does not become still by force. It becomes still when the wind stops disturbing it. Your mind works the same way. Right now, in this very moment, if you stop resisting, if you stop trying to control the uncontrollable, if you stop clinging to thoughts about how things should be, what happens? Instantly, there is silence. Instantly, there is space. Instantly, there is peace. Not because you added anything, but because you removed what was in the way. People think they need to do something to achieve a stress-free life, but the truth is, they need to stop doing. Stop overthinking. Stop resisting. Stop living in a constant state of mental tension. The only reason stress exists is because the mind refuses to let go. It replays the past. It imagines worst-case scenarios. It clings to expectations. It argues with reality. But reality does not care about your expectations. It simply is. And the moment you align with it instead of fighting it, stress disappears. Right now, notice how much tension exists in your body. Notice how much your mind is holding on to fears, worries, unfinished conversations, things you regret, things you hope for. Now, just let it all drop. Let go of the idea that you need to control everything. Let go of the idea that life needs to be different for you to be okay. Let go of the belief that peace is something waiting for you in the future when it has been right here, in this moment, all along. The only reason you haven't felt it is because you were too busy chasing something that was never outside of you. Stress is not something life gives you. Stress is something you create by believing that this moment is not enough. The moment you stop believing that, the moment you stop running, the moment you stop trying to control things that were never in your control, you don't have to wait for peace anymore. It is already here. It has always been here. All you ever had to do was stop running long enough to notice. People spend their whole lives trying to escape stress, searching for some secret formula to make it all go away. But they never realize that the very act of searching is what keeps them trapped. They think, I just need to figure it all out. Then I'll finally be able to relax. But the mind never runs out of things to figure out. They believe peace is something they have to earn, something they have to work toward, but that belief itself is what keeps them restless. They don't see that peace is not something to be achieved, but something that reveals itself the moment they stop chasing it. Every animal in nature already understands this. A bird does not sit in a tree worrying about tomorrow. A lion does not spend its days overanalyzing the past. Only humans do this, and that is why only humans suffer from stress. The mind creates problems that don't exist, imagines futures that haven't happened, replays moments that are already gone, and then wonders why it feels overwhelmed. But here's the truth: stress is not caused by life. Stress is caused by the mind's resistance to life. And the moment that resistance drops, peace is instant. Imagine holding a heavy backpack full of rocks. You've been carrying it for years, your back aching, your muscles straining, convinced that one day you'll reach a place where you can finally put it down. But what if the only reason you're suffering is because no one ever told you that you could drop it now? This is exactly how people live. They carry the weight of expectations, regrets, fears, and imagined pressures, believing that one day, after they've fixed everything, they'll finally find relief. But what if relief was never waiting in the future? What if it was always one decision away? The decision to stop carrying what was never yours to carry in the first place. Nothing in nature holds on the way humans do. Leaves fall without hesitation. Rivers flow without resistance. The seasons change without needing permission. But people, they grip onto things long after they've passed. They fight against what is already happening. They refuse to let go, even when holding on is the only thing causing them pain. And then they wonder why life feels so heavy. Right now, in this exact moment, there is nothing you need to do, nothing you need to fix, nothing you need to chase. The only thing standing between you and complete peace is the belief that something is missing. But what if nothing is missing? What if everything you have been searching for is already here, already inside you, waiting for you to stop long enough to notice? There is nothing standing in your way, except the thought that peace is something you must reach instead of something that appears the moment you stop running. Stress is not something life forces upon you. Stress is something you create by believing that this moment is not enough. The moment you stop believing that, everything changes. Not because life suddenly becomes perfect, but because you finally stop fighting with what is. And when that happens, when you finally let go of the illusion that you need anything more than what is already here, you realize that the peace you were chasing was never in the future. It was always right here, in the space between thoughts, in the silence beneath the noise, in the stillness that has been patiently waiting for you to stop and see it. People think they need to do something to find peace, that if they just fix one more thing, achieve one more goal, solve one more problem, then they'll finally be able to relax. But peace is not something you create, it's what's left when you stop creating stress. Right now, in this very moment, if you stop thinking about the future, if you stopped replaying the past, if you stopped resisting what is, what would be left? Just silence, just space, just being. But most people never experience this because they are always lost in their thoughts, always living in a world of imagined fears and endless expectations. They don't realize that stress is not something life gives them, it's something they generate by refusing to accept life as it is. They believe they need control, but control has never been real. They believe they need certainty, but certainty has never existed. They are chasing something that was never there to begin with, and that is why they always feel like they are falling behind. Imagine a person caught in quicksand, struggling, panicking, trying to fight their way out. The more they struggle, the deeper they sink. But if they stop resisting, if they relax, if they surrender to the very thing they were fighting, they float. This is exactly how stress works. The more you resist, the stronger it becomes. The more you cling, the more you suffer. The mind is constantly trying to control things it was never meant to control: other people, the future, the past, the outcome of every little detail. And yet, none of these things have ever truly been in your hands. The only thing you have ever had control over is how tightly you hold on. And the tighter you grip, the more pain you create for yourself. Letting go is not about giving up. It's not about being passive. It's about realizing that you were never supposed to carry all of this in the first place. It's about understanding that the weight you feel is not coming from the world, but from your own resistance to it. Right now, notice how much tension you're holding in your body. Notice how much your mind is spinning, trying to predict, trying to control, trying to grasp for something solid. Now, just drop it. Just let it be. Nothing needs to change. Nothing needs to be fixed. The only thing that ever needed to happen was for you to stop believing that peace was somewhere other than here. Stress is not proof that life is difficult. Stress is proof that the mind is caught in a fight it was never meant to win. And the moment you stop fighting, the moment you stop believing that you need to struggle to survive, the moment you stop searching for peace in a future that doesn't exist, you realize it was here the entire time. Peace has never been missing. You were just too busy chasing something else to notice. People spend their whole lives running, chasing, reaching for something just out of grasp, convinced that once they get there, everything will finally fall into place. But it never does. The promotion comes, and the stress remains. The relationship begins, and the insecurity stays. The money increases, and the anxiety doesn't leave. because the problem was never the circumstances. The problem was the mind's habit of never being satisfied, of always shifting the goalpost, of believing that peace is something waiting in the future instead of something that exists only in the present. This is why no achievement ever brings lasting fulfillment. The mind simply moves on to the next thing, always needing more, always convinced that something is missing. But what if nothing is missing? What if the only thing standing between you and peace is the belief that you need something else to be okay? The truth is, peace doesn't come from fixing life. Peace comes from realizing that life was never broken. Imagine sitting by a river, watching the water flow. If you try to grab it, if you try to hold on to it, it slips through your fingers. But if you simply watch, if you allow it to move without interference, it is effortless, natural, beautiful. Life works the same way. The more you try to control it, the more frustrated you become. The more you try to force outcomes, the more resistance you create. People think they need to solve every problem, predict every future event, hold everything together. But this is an impossible task, and deep down, they know it. That's why they're exhausted. That's why they feel trapped. Not because life is too hard, but because they are trying to do something that was never their job in the first place. The river does not need you to push it. Life does not need you to micromanage it. Things will happen. Things will change. Things will come and go. And none of it has ever been under your control. The only thing you have ever controlled is how much you resist what is already happening. And the more you resist, the more you suffer. Right now, notice the constant noise in your mind, the thoughts about what needs to be done, the unfinished conversations, the worries about tomorrow. Now, imagine if all of it just stopped. Not because you solved everything, not because you figured it all out, but because you simply stopped engaging with it. The mind will always produce thoughts, but you don't have to hold on to them. The world will always be moving, but you don't have to fight it. Peace is what appears the moment you stop insisting that things should be different. Stress is not a requirement of life. It is a habit of the mind. And the moment you break that habit, the moment you stop believing that struggle is necessary, the moment you stop running long enough to notice what has been here all along, you realize that peace was never something you had to find. It was something you had to stop covering up. People live as if life is a problem to solve, constantly analyzing, planning, worrying, trying to stay ahead of every possible outcome, as if one day they'll finally figure it all out and be able to relax. But that day never comes because the mind doesn't know how to stop. It moves from one concern to the next, always keeping you in a state of tension, always making you believe there's something else you need to fix before you can be at peace. But what if nothing needs fixing? What if the only thing keeping you from peace is the belief that you don't already have it? People think they need certainty to feel safe, but certainty has never existed. They think they need control to feel secure, but control has always been an illusion. Life has never operated according to personal timelines, never adjusted itself to fit human expectations, never promised to be predictable. Yet people exhaust themselves trying to force it into submission, trying to shape reality into something that feels manageable, and in doing so, they create their own suffering. Imagine holding onto a rope with all your strength, convinced that if you let go, you'll fall. Your muscles are burning, your hands are in pain, but you refuse to release it because you believe that gripping tightly is the only thing keeping you safe. But what if you let go and discovered that you were never in danger at all? That's what happens when you stop fighting life. when you stop trying to control every detail, when you stop believing that stress is a necessary part of existence. The tension you feel is not coming from life itself, it's coming from your resistance to it. The more you try to control, the more anxious you become. The more you fight reality, the more exhausted you feel. But the moment you stop, the moment you drop the need to control what was never in your hands to begin with, there is instant relief. Not because life suddenly becomes perfect, but because you are no longer carrying the impossible burden of trying to make it so. Right now, notice how much effort your mind is putting into managing things that were never yours to manage. Notice how it constantly runs through scenarios, replays the past, anticipates the future, convinced that this mental struggle is necessary. Now imagine if all of that just stopped. Not because everything was solved, not because life became predictable, but because you simply decided to stop engaging with the endless cycle of mental noise. Peace is not something you find by fixing life. Peace is what remains when you stop believing the mind's illusion that something is missing. Stress is not proof that life is difficult, it's proof that the mind is addicted to control. And the moment you break that addiction, the moment you stop believing that struggle is required, the moment you stop waiting for some future moment to bring you the peace that is already here, you realize that you were never lacking anything. The only thing standing between you and freedom was the belief that you had to fight for it.